You ever have one of those moments where your entire Sunday morning peace gets annihilated by a sound so jarring it short-circuits your brain? That was me, standing in my kitchen, barely awake, holding a mug of steaming coffee when I heard it. A shriek so piercing it bypassed the sound barrier and settled right into my soul. "Call 911. He's trespassing on community property." The words hit like a slap, and in my startled flinch, the coffee flew straight onto my shorts, boiling hot. I yelped, doing that awkward little dance of someone trying to strip off fabric while also peeking out the window like a horror movie extra who knows they're next. My heart thumped like a drumline. I thought maybe a break-in was happening, or a raccoon had finally started a turf war with Karen's yappy little Yorkie. But no, it was far worse than that. Outside, in the middle of the street, was Karen, my neighbor, suburban tyrant, and human embodiment of a malfunctioning smoke alarm. Her face was crimson, twisted with the sort of rage usually reserved for natural disasters and malfunctioning cable boxes. She stood planted like a deranged traffic conductor, brandishing her iPhone like it was a ceremonial dagger, jabbing it toward the source of her wrath, my black Jeep. My perfectly parked, entirely lawful, wholly unremarkable black Jeep. Sitting exactly where it should be, right in my driveway. My own driveway. Karen's voice cracked as she continued to scream about community regulations, trespassing, violations, and visual disturbances, each word more unhinged than the last. Her eyes bulged like she had just seen Lucifer himself parallel park. She tried to take photos, but her hands were shaking so hard, it looked like she was trying to film a found-footage horror movie. I froze, trying to process whether I'd woken up in an alternate reality. I mean, I'd lived here peacefully for 2 years. 2 years of morning jogs, neighborly waves, and the occasional block party. And now this woman was acting like my car had defaced a national monument. I stepped outside, still in a damp pajama shirt, shorts stained with the latest roast from Colombia, trying to find the words that would bring sanity back to earth. Karen spun on me like a spring-loaded jack-in-the-box. She jabbed a finger at my Jeep with the fury of a courtroom prosecutor. "That vehicle," she hissed, "is in violation of our homeowners association's rules. This is community property, and you are blocking visual harmony." I blinked, slowly, processing each syllable as if I were decoding an ancient curse. "Karen," I said, as gently as I could, "it's my driveway. I live here. I own this house." But she wasn't listening. She was already pacing in aggressive little circles, shouting into her phone again. "Yes, 911. Yes, there's a male being confrontational. He's trespassing on HOA regulated space. Large black vehicle, possibly armed with sarcasm." I kid you not, 2 squad cars showed up within minutes. The officers emerged expecting chaos, maybe a domestic disturbance. Instead, they saw me, damp shorts, coffee mug in hand, blinking at them from my own porch, and Karen, still pointing at my parked car like she was on a ghost hunting expedition. One of the officers actually sighed, visibly, out loud. Karen pounced with paperwork in hand, crumpled, sun-faded, probably dug out from a shoebox buried beneath dusty old PTA badges. She shoved printouts into their hands, ranting about bylaws, aesthetic balance, and how my Jeep was militaristic in nature and emotionally disruptive to the ambience of the neighborhood. The officer skimmed the paper, then turned to me. "Sir, is this your vehicle?" I nodded. "Do you live here?" Another nod. He turned back to Karen and asked, "Is there a current and active HOA in place?" And that's when her face changed. Just a flicker, but it was there. A micro flinch, like someone who's been slapped with a cold truth. "Well, not currently," she muttered, "but I am using the previously established guidelines until we can reinstate the board." The younger officer arched an eyebrow. So it's not active? Not officially, she stammered. Then this gentleman is allowed to park in his driveway. Karen's jaw tightened, quivered, and she let out a gasp that sounded like a deflating air mattress. This, she spat, is a disgrace to suburban order. Later that evening, after the officers had left and I was beginning to think the madness might have ended, I returned from the grocery store to find a letter taped to my windshield. It was typed, laminated, and adorned with clip art of gavels, caution signs, and what looked like a stock photo of a neighborhood with the word "order" photoshopped across it. The letter accused me of violating visual consistency laws, demanded a $75 fine be paid to the community fund, and was signed Karen, acting HOA president, temporarily reinstated in spiritual capacity. I laughed so hard I almost dropped my bag of frozen waffles. Spiritual capacity. What did that even mean? Was she running a bootleg version of the iOS for neighborhoods? But the laughter didn't last. Not for long. Because the next morning, she was out there again, clipboard in hand, snapping photos of my car from every conceivable angle. It looked like an episode of CSI Suburbia. She flagged down my Amazon driver and lectured him about illegal easement violations. Then she cornered my friend Eric, who'd come by to drop off a toolbox, and demanded to see his vehicle's registration. Eric, who has the patience of a monk but the wit of a stand-up comic, looked her dead in the eyes and asked, "Do you also need a retina scan and a stool sample?" Karen didn't laugh, but I did. That night I sat down and decided to dig deeper. If she wanted to play HOA president, I was going to audit the kingdom. I logged into the county's public record system and started pulling up everything I could find. Easements, zoning codes, homeowner regulations, HOA documentation. And that's when I struck gold. The HOA dissolved. Officially, legally, 3.5 years ago, following a bizarre lawsuit involving a fallen elm tree and a trampoline. There were no active members, no elected board, no legally binding rules. Karen had been operating on pure delusion and nostalgia, but that wasn't even the best part. As I examined the survey maps, something else caught my eye. Her backyard shed, the bright yellow eyesore she had decorated with plastic flamingos and flower decals, was not fully on her land. It extended 4 feet into mine, 4 glorious feet. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long, slow whistle. This wasn't just hypocrisy. This was cosmic symmetry. The woman who screamed about visual pollution and trespassing had been squatting on my property with her clown-colored shed the entire time. I took a screenshot, saved the map, named the file karmarama.pdf, because now it wasn't just about a Jeep anymore. It was about proving a point. Karen had declared war, and I had just discovered my first missile. The next morning, I watched as she placed another fake notice on my windshield. I didn't say a word, just smiled, waved, and went back inside. Because I now had something better than a comeback. I had the truth, the receipts, and a 4-foot buffer zone to bury her nonsense, once and for all. And just like that, the quiet guy with the black Jeep became a suburban resistance fighter. Because when a self-declared HOA Karen declares war on your driveway, you don't just park, you dig in. Karen's silence didn't last long. Like a volcano pretending to be dormant, she re-emerged with renewed force. Only this time she came back not just louder, but with props. Gone was the clipboard and faux HOA tent. In their place, she unveiled a new persona. A bright yellow reflective vest now hugged her torso, stamped with the words, "Visual Order Enforcer," across the back in crooked black letters. Over that, she wore a neon sash that read, "Community Beautification Task Lead," as if she'd appointed herself the guardian of suburban aesthetics. And right beside her, her Yorkie, who now sported a tiny sheriff's badge strapped to its harness, barking indignantly at passing squirrels as if defending municipal order. Karen had gone from fake president to full-blown street marshal. Her front yard transformed overnight. Where once there was just a mailbox and a badly trimmed hedge, now stood a row of orange traffic cones, a folding table littered with pamphlets, and a banner stretched between two mini-flag poles that read, Neighborhood Restoration Initiative, Defending Traditional Aesthetics. It looked less like a homeowner's display and more like someone trying to get a petition signed for an alien invasion. She handed out yard citations again, only now they were styled like legitimate government tickets. Some even had fake barcodes printed at the bottom for extra flair. I scanned one out of curiosity, just led to a dead Google Docs link. The ticket accused me of an excessive flamingo violation, citing my increasingly ridiculous pink lawn ornament collection, which I had grown out of sheer spite. Apparently, having more than 5 flamingos was now considered a Class C aesthetic offense. I had 37, deliberately. That same afternoon, I tripled the number and added 2 inflatable flamingos, whose wings flapped in the wind like joyful middle fingers to Karen's campaign. I positioned them in a direct V formation, aimed squarely at her yard like a plastic army ready for suburban siege. I also erected a large wooden sign beside my Jeep that said in bold block letters, Private Driveway, not for Karen's guests. That sign sent her over the edge. She stormed out screaming that the flamingos were disrupting wildlife patterns, that the sign was inciting public unrest, and that my Jeep still violated visual pollution statutes. I calmly watered my roses. A few neighbors came out and just stood there watching, like it was a matinee performance they hadn't paid for, but were definitely enjoying. But then came her next play, perhaps the most absurd one yet. Karen claimed that the motion sensor lights on my porch were causing her Yorkie to have anxiety episodes. She insisted that the reflected glare from my Jeep's polished hood created a weaponized flash field that endangered her dog's vision and disoriented passing pedestrians. I didn't think she could top that until she filed a noise complaint against my wind chimes. At that point, I knew it was time to escalate, but not with anger, with strategy. That weekend, I hosted what I dubbed the Truth Bomb Cookout, a backyard gathering open to the entire block. Flyers were printed. Free brisket was promised. Fairy lights were strung across the fence, and the smell of barbecue alone brought neighbors flocking in. Curiosity mingled with skepticism, but mostly, people were just hungry and tired of the chaos. Once everyone had their paper plates and sweet tea, I stepped forward with the kind of calm only truth and smoked meat can provide. I began with photos, high-res shots of Karen's shed, the corner that extended exactly 4 feet into my property. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then I brought out the official survey maps, showing that her precious floral eyesore had been squatting on my land like a backyard barnacle. People laughed, pointed, whispered, but I wasn't done. Next, I displayed the public records, documents confirming that our HOA had been legally dissolved years ago. No board, no bylaws, no jurisdiction. Karen's rules were as fictional as her title. Then came the crown jewel, a recording of her infamous HOA meeting, where she referred to her scarecrow as the acting vice president and discussed disciplinary flower arrangements for violators. Laughter erupted. Someone nearly choked on a rib. And then the final blow. A secret audio clip I'd captured of Karen bragging to a neighbor about forging HOA letters because most people are too dumb to check. The laughter shifted. It got quieter, meaner. People weren't just amused anymore, they were furious. The lies, the manipulation, the intimidation. It all came crashing down. In the days that followed, something changed in the neighborhood. Mr. Donnelly, the retiree who kept to himself, hung a banner across his front yard. My lawn. My rules. Mrs. Chan, who Karen had forced to repaint her shutters twice, placed a single flamingo by her porch with a handwritten sign that read, "Viva Revolution." Karen had lost control. Her iron grip had been broken by a brisket-fueled barbecue and a PowerPoint presentation. But of course, she didn't take it lying down. Every morning, she resumed her patrol, only now with an even more theatrical flair. She would pause in front of my house and dramatically narrate her disapproval. "Oh dear," she'd sigh loudly. "Looks like someone's grass is 0.2 inches too tall today. What a pity." It was like living next to a community theatre performance no one asked to attend. One morning, I caught her standing across the street with binoculars and a notepad, muttering to herself and shaking her head like a disappointed headmistress. That's when I knew it was time to trigger the final phase of my plan. I had my attorney friend draft an official cease and desist letter, complete with legal language, references to property code violations, and a printed photo of her shed overlapping my land, with a measuring tape in the frame for good measure. That evening I slipped the letter into her mailbox and waited. I didn't have to wait long. I saw her under the porch light that night, reading the document. Her hands trembled, her face contorted. Then she disappeared inside without a word. For the first time in weeks, Karen didn't yell, didn't patrol, didn't deliver yard citations. It was like the air itself exhaled. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because Karen doesn't surrender. She regroups. And she came back, not as a fake president or beautification officer, but something entirely new. It happened on trash day. I wheeled my bin to the curb, aligning it just like I always had, precisely at the edge of my driveway. Nothing unusual, nothing provocative. Or so I thought. Moments later, I heard her signature screech. "This is an illegal waste barrier." I looked outside to see her dragging her garbage bin into the center of the road, standing with arms outstretched, like she was defending the final flag in a war no one else was fighting. Neighbors peeked through windows. Some stepped outside in disbelief. Karen yelled that my trash can was threatening the community's navigational rhythm and disrupting the symmetric harmony of refuge aesthetics. No one knew what that meant, but it sounded ridiculous enough to be pure Karen. I stepped outside holding a banana peel, asked if she needed help moving her bin. She responded by pointing directly at me and declaring, "The law is coming for you." And sure enough, a cruiser rolled up, same officer from the Jeep incident. As he stepped out, she launched into her usual tirade. "He's weaponizing his waste, creating trip hazards, destabilizing sanitation logistics." The officer rubbed his temples. "Is this your property?" he asked me. I nodded. "Is your trash can within the boundary?" Another nod. He turned to Karen and said simply, "This is a civil matter. We're not filing charges over trash." That was the moment her world cracked. She pointed to my bin and screamed, "He's running a rogue waste operation and you're all complicit." That got her a citation for obstructing public property. The neighborhood Facebook group lit up again. Someone posted a ring cam screenshot of Karen mid-rant, both trash bins in hand, captioned, "Bin Laden strikes again." The post went viral. The legend of Karen reached a new level. Her response? Homemade protest signs all over her lawn. Messages like, "I stand for structure," and "Chaos starts with your can," written in red marker and duct taped to her mailbox and porch railings. Even her Yorkie stroller got a sign, "Patrolling for Purity." Meanwhile, I added another flamingo to the front lines, this one holding a miniature sign that said, "Freedom Bin." 2 days later, the sheriff showed up. Not for me, but for her. He wasn't there to talk. He had paperwork, a formal warning, citations for harassment, impersonation of an HOA, and repeated public nuisance behavior. Karen tried to laugh it off, offered him a clipboard labeled Community Officer Application. He stared at it, blinked, and said, "You need to stop." And just like that, something shifted. Karen stopped yelling, stopped patrolling, stopped issuing fake citations. The flamingos remained, as did the driveway sign. But Karen was done. A week later, a real estate sign appeared in her yard. She was leaving, packing up her laminated rules, her delusional titles, her flamingo-festooned shed. The street buzzed. Some neighbors took their lawn chairs out just to enjoy the weather. But we all knew the truth. We were watching the finale. When the movers loaded her pastel furniture in the shed, one of them accidentally knocked over her ancient "Keep off my property" sign. She exploded at him, accused him of sabotage. He kept moving, ignored her. And finally, as the truck backed out, I released my final gift, a banner trailing beneath a drone. Driveway wins. HOA. Karen loses. The neighborhood erupted in laughter. Even the mailman clapped. Karen glared one last time from the passenger seat of the truck, her Yorkie beside her. As they reached the end of the street, her window rolled down. She leaned out and shouted, "This neighborhood is toxic. You'll see. You'll all see." The truck rumbled away. The sun was shining. A pink flamingo feather drifted from my tree and landed softly on the grass. We had survived the storm. The street was ours again. And the driveway? Still parked, still proud, still untouchable.